Right, well, good afternoon, everybody. This is the final session, also known as the graveyard shift. I hope you've had a really good conference so far the last 2 days. It's great to be back in Amsterdam since our first event in 2009. So thank you very much for your support. If you haven't noticed the brochures, your feedback is really, really important to us so we can continually improve. So it's time to introduce the panel. Let's go from Mickey on the end. Go on.
Yep. Hi, I'm Mickey Kana. I'm Sales Director at Optimus Performance Marketing. We are an affiliate management agency.
Okay. Oh, I'm Jochem Vroom. I work at Imbol, and we are launching global couponing websites, flipit.com, and in the Netherlands we are also active with couponing.
Hi, I'm Charlie Ranger, and I work at TUI as online marketing manager, managing Thompson and First Choice brands.
And I'm Ellie Pickering. I'm head of advertiser development for the UK at Commission Junction.
And I'm Matthew Ed. I'm founded Performance In, or this conference, but also the product director and investor at a company called VoucherCloud. What would be really good is actually get a good understanding of who's in the room. So if you're from a network, could you put your hands up? Okay, so 20%. Publisher? Okay, about 25. And agency? I'm going to say another 25. Everyone else? Okay, great. Fine, so that's really good. So this session is about maximizing the publisher-network relationship. And we're going to go through a number of questions that we've gone through this afternoon and in the lead up to this session. I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. This is the final session of the day. So I'm going to start off. So if you do have questions, do feel free to put your hand up. I'm going to start with Jochem, actually, because one of the questions we put out is how do you make yourself visible? And I put a tweet out on this session just before, and I kind of said, very prepping for my session, how do you not be ignored by a network? And how do you grab attention? And this chap, Nick, publisher from the UK, didn't really like my tweet. He sort of suggested that actually it should be the network that do all the work. And I kind of went back and said, well, no, actually the study that we did at Performance In suggested there are well over 10,000 publishers in the UK alone. So the ratio of account managers, I mean, how many account managers do you have at CJ in the UK, for instance?
We have around 20 working on the UK
20.
accounts. Yeah.
So 20 to 10,000, it's not a great ratio. So I sort of said, so yes, you do need to fight for attention. That's really important. And these guys kind of back me up on this statement. And most of these, 2 out of the 3s are publishers, including Graham from Top Cashback. And he said, be visible, which is the question that I just asked. Be available and be responsive. 3 really, really important things as publishers that you should be doing. What's the middle one? Be proactive. Again, don't whine, don't whinge. Help the account manager. So it's very much a two-way relationship. It's not publisher versus the network. This is performance marketing. It's affiliate marketing. It's all about the relationship. So Jochem has started, Jochem owns the largest voucher code site in the Netherlands, I believe. Is that right? Yep.
Yeah,
and he's just started flipit.com, which is a multinational platform for voucher codes across Europe and other territories. So could you tell us a little about some of the strategies you've used over the last few months to both generate noise and traction for ActiCode and Flipit?
Well, I think that the market has changed. You know, in the past, the story that the guy was telling, like why don't advertisers take care of it, was true. But for now, I see that it's very important to get noticed and to for our website we did everything we could to get noticed with press packages, by sitting here, by going on all websites around it and talking to people and hiring account managers and things like that. It's just being professional and being open for cooperations. And in my eyes, you could get away with it 3 years ago or 2 years ago, maybe even, with not saying anything and being a huge publisher. But for now, you have to, you know, you have to get a story to be noticed, and that's what we've done. We've created even if you come to our website, you see a page our adventure, you know, we call it, and that's how we also internally call it, and people like it, and it's a big difference than how we started with just SEO and
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that you mentioned, and Eleanor, I think you mentioned this also, it's about credibility. It's making sure that as a publisher you are credible. You mentioned Crunchbase, for example, so putting your website on Crunchbase.
Yeah, there are a lot of websites that you can get your company out on, and for Germany, for example, we are on Gründerzine. I didn't know it existed, but it seems it was. It's an important founders website in Germany, and then we're really trying to get noticed on the websites around our websites that are important. Not so much on links or whatever, but just on being there.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, how about from the network perspective? What do you see publishers doing to raise awareness for their business with CJ?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think just to reiterate what Matt said earlier, I think you know, networks are really out there to get as much publisher interaction as we can, and it's a challenge to us that there are so many of you out there and relatively few of us to kind of look after you. So it is important that you kind of make yourselves available to us, kind of flag when you've got a good idea to sell in, and that you're very clear with what your objectives are and what the end benefits for the advertiser are going to be. So you know, I always like it when someone rings into the network, is really passionate about their products, what it is they're trying to achieve as a publisher, and so that some of that enthusiasm bubbles over, we can communicate it to the team, and they can go out and kind of be your advocate with the advertisers. Because I think it's a real cliche in this industry, it's a truth, but a cliche, this idea that you know, publishers are the advertisers' sales force, but I think publishers should see the network as their sales force and really kind of arm us with the information to go out and speak credibly for you and enthusiastically about what you've got to offer our advertisers. Because at the end of the day, you know, new blood in the publisher business, new things going on, exciting ways to promote products kind of keeps this channel alive, and so we're 100% behind it.
What about you, Charlie, from TUI's perspective? How are advertisers making themselves visible to you?
Yeah. So first of all, we work with the networks to help us get sort of the new publishers on our radar. But most importantly, it's about having that face-to-face interaction. So we're always encouraged setting up a meeting with them. And then we talked earlier about this credibility and having the data that's credible. And that's really important to us. So it's about making sure that the publishers have realistic traffic forecasts for us and not something that's completely off the radar. And then also something that's really innovative, that is new, that we haven't looked at before. We're always interested in that. And bringing along, you know, what the website looks like, and a media pack as well, just being sort of really professional. So, that, yeah, that's what we look for. Good.
We'll come on to media packs. I mean, that might seem a really basic thing to be doing as a publisher, but there are some really terrible media packs out there, and I'm sure Mickey can add to that from the agency's perspective. One of the things that I think Paul is in the background there from VoucherCloud, one of the things that we did when we first started in the UK was actually to go visit all of the networks. And we had arranged time slots, and we had up to 30 account managers at, for example, Affiliate Window, where we could go and present some of the innovative things VoucherCloud were doing, especially around in-store. And that way, because these, on the whole, account managers at these networks are pretty young, they're hungry to learn, we then had 30 account managers that were selling our product into the brands that they manage. And we immediately saw an uplift in engagement and interest from one trip to London. You know, it's an hour and a half away. We did more than one network in a day, and it was very valuable use of time. So Mickey, what about from the agency perspective? You must see a lot of media packs and stuff like that.
I think from an agency perspective, we see the viewpoint from the network side as well as from the merchant side as well, because we're acting almost as a conduit between the two partners, really, for the merchant. So I think on the one side, you know, I'm primarily responsible for new merchants coming on to Optimus Performance Marketing's affiliate management side. But every now and again, I get requests through from publishers who want to speak to somebody about becoming a publisher on one of our clients' programs. So I point them in the direction of the person to speak to. And luckily, you know, if if your agency is managing, or if you have an agency that's managing your program, speak to the person at the agency and tell them why you want to work with that merchant. You know, if you've made the initial contact, you've got a good niche, that always goes down really well, because if it's something different, then, you know, we are responsive to all publisher inquiries, which is a good thing, you know, because at the end of the day, everybody gets a chance to show what they can do. And I think, you know, it's good to have that open, receptive approach when a new publisher's coming on board and embrace what they're doing to a certain extent, you know, if it's something that would tick the boxes that the merchant's looking for. Some points have been raised about sort of, you know, quantifying the data or your offering as a publisher. So, you know, what are the stats, what are the metrics, why, you know, what are your, you know, traffic volumes? But equally, even if you don't deliver sales, but you're delivering traffic that merchant wasn't necessarily getting before, that's a value add as far as a merchant's concerned, because they weren't seeing those clicks and those eyeballs going to their site previously. So I think that's important to, you know, just to sort of get out there as well. In terms of media packs, yeah, they do vary from each merchant, but from each publisher, sorry. They are a very important part of a publisher becoming part of an affiliate program for the merchant, because without that information, we as an agency are second guessing what that merchant can do what that affiliate can do for the merchant. If we haven't got the information pack or the marketing materials behind that, then, you know, just making your life as a publisher much more difficult to engage with a merchant's program.
Okay. So a typical media pack, I mean, these are really basic things that publishers should have. Could we quickly go around the panel and say two things that you expect to see? It'd be really interesting to start with you, actually, Charlie, from the advertiser side. I know you mentioned earlier that don't overegg your traffic stats, for example.
Yeah. Well, in terms of traffic, I mean, always, if they've got access to Hitwise, then that's a good thing to show us, because obviously that's data that we trust. So if they've got access to that, then we'd encourage them to bring that along with them. But if they're a smaller site and they're only just setting out, then obviously they won't be in Hitwise. So yeah, it's just going back to making sure that whatever the stats are, they are realistic. And timescales, we've had affiliates come to us in the past saying they're going to launch this website, and then it's never launched, and we've sort of put focus on that affiliate for sort of key trading periods, and then they've never launched the site. So it's always making sure that they're coming with realistic timescales on when that site is going to be going live as well.
Okay, great. What about you, Joachim? What do you put in your packs to present to networks?
Well, first of all, I want to respond a bit on the traffic side. It's so hard for a starting affiliate or for a new project to get it out there. It's like I can only give you like weekly growth, because at the moment it's so low, the traffic for a global project. But it's, you know, it's hard to give out those numbers. So it's hard to get it in the media package, but in our packages we mix them a bit up with the media packages to the press, and well, what they say that's a bit different is we need pictures and we need stuff, but we just put them in and send them over, and this is who we are, this is what we do, this is our story, and this is our company, and we've had some really good responses out of a bit over-the-top press package, but yeah, we implemented everything we could.
Aside from just about the traffic stats, from an advertiser point of view, we're wanting to really know how they're going to be promoting our brands. So it's getting that across that is the key for us. So if they can do that, then that's already a big tick from our side.
So full transparency.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Quick question for Joachim. So you've gone to other countries, and can you rely on your reputation alone? I mean, I can imagine you're generating probably a significant amount of money for Dutch networks, but when you say launch to Italy and you're unknown, what are you going to do there?
A bit. It's like the global networks help us out quite well. You know, they know what we do and they know the traffic that we can send, and we pick them up very easy for us. For us, it's like harder to get known into a new network, but that's more of our job. I see that, to get, like in France, you have the network Public Ideas. I met on the event, and I haven't really spoken to them and haven't really put time into them, and then I'm like, I'm forgetting something. It's my fault, you know. But the global networks, they could be a great support, but then you really, if you give wrong numbers and if you mess with their time, you know, then it gets a problem, you know.
One hit.
Yeah, you have an opportunity. If my website fails, I have a problem launching another one. So yeah.
I think that the challenge with globalisation and this idea of expanding beyond a tried and trusted market into new areas is always the thing. I mean, we find from network side that the real advantage to the advertiser is having people in country who know that market, understand the challenges and really understand what works there. And so sometimes there is a bit of a challenge kind of sort of pushing forward an affiliate who's very successful in one territory and saying, oh, we're 100% behind these guys. We know they're going to do well in other territories, because you might come across a roadblock with a perception in that other territory where they think, well, that model's never going to work, or you know, it's too advanced for where we're at this stage. So I think there is a real challenge in us kind of pulling together and using our shared resource and pushing publisher opportunities across borders. But I think we also have to be a bit realistic in terms of it's not always going to work perfectly. And perhaps there are models that are going to take much longer to catch on in other areas than in the countries where they're currently successful.
I think just to sort of, as a sort of spin-off on that particular point there, if an affiliate is working, you know, reasonably well for one particular merchant, and they're relatively small in that sector, but you know they're delivering some high conversion, or they're delivering some good traffic. One of the benefits, I guess, really is that obviously if they have that relationship directly with the network, then their network account manager would be able to share that publisher information or share other merchant information with that publisher to say, well, you're doing really well on this program, they're very happy, have you thought about promoting these other merchants that are within that same sector? So I think you know, that's a responsibility there on the network side, but for us as an agency it's a responsibility as well, which I'd like to think we do very well, in the fact that if we see somebody doing, you know, decent volume, then we will let that affiliate know that they can apply to 3 other merchants in that field. So you know, that's where the relationship building comes in, and making sure you are contactable, so we, you know, as an agency, can present you with these opportunities.
So that leads on, I think, quite nicely to the next question, which is about the data and the reports that networks hold themselves. Networks hold a huge amount of data, and they will provide you with certainly benchmark reports, for example. I had one the other day for the voucher code segment, where you had competitor A, B, C, D, E. You don't know who they are, but you could do a bit of digging around, and you could very clearly and quickly understand who they are. And you could send these off to your analysis teams, SEO teams, and so forth. And it's also very, very useful when you can know how you're comparing in terms of revenue by competitors. You can go to your board, you can go to your management teams, you can get extra budget to fuel things like SEO, for example. But those reports aren't available through the admin interfaces. As a whole, you have to go and ask your account manager, and only then will they do it. And sometimes, I think you alluded to earlier, that sometimes that data is only really available for the top 100 or so publishers. But if you ask your networks, I think you will probably get them. Are there any other kind of reports that you've provided publishers, or you've had access to as a publisher, that you would recommend, trying to get access to?
Well, personally, I really like it if there's like a market report on our niche about how it went and how the tracking went, and sending that to advertisers so you know it works and stuff like that. And that's what really helps us. But that's another kind of report, but it takes a lot of time for the networks to create it and to put it into the press. But that's something that helps us greatly.
Okay.
But not real data, no.
What about at CJ? Do you guys?
I mean, some people request reports by device split if they don't have that already. So, you know, being able to assess whether they're growing in an area of mobile devices, whether they should be investing more in their kind of iPad format, and also having a mobile site that works, or whether that traffic isn't so important. And, you know, it's a trend across the networks that we're seeing, certainly in the UK, sales on mobile devices growing and growing and growing. So I mean, that's kind of an example of a custom report that wouldn't be available when you logged into the interface, but it's something that we could pull for you and provide. And I think it's really a question of being quite collaborative with your account manager, or kind of really putting a line in the sand and saying, look, the more information you can give me, the more effective I'm going to be with your advertisers, and ultimately, you know, the more revenue is going to come out of this relationship. So we, certainly at Commission Junction, we can be pretty flexible in what we can share, and I think a one-size-fits-all approach isn't particularly helpful here. It's really important to understand, you know, what data you really need, and to be able to pull that together for you in a way that's beneficial for everyone involved in the relationship.
Good. Okay. Anything else to add? Anyone? No?
I think from my perspective as an agency, for us it's very important to have that relationship at the affiliate networks, so making sure that we are in direct communication with the publisher development manager, someone who can send us as an agency a list of the new affiliates that have joined the network with their affiliate handle or their affiliate ID, and you know, they'll attach sometimes a press pack with that as well, and then we will share that information with well, each Optimus PM account manager has that information. They share it with their clients. I think in terms of getting access to the more, you know, integral data, the sort of the more sort of like you know, the what do you call it? I suppose the bones of a specific affiliate type, or small publisher, medium or large. One of the things that we do is coordinate the meetings between the network, the affiliate and the merchant in the same room together if there's new opportunities. I think that's quite important as well. If the availability is there on the network, on the affiliate side to be present at certain meetings, then that goes down really well. If not, then obviously there's other ways of making sure that all three parties are talking in the same room. You've got Skype, you know, conference calling and what have you. So I think that's an important point.
Okay. The one report that I missed out actually is the vertical reports. It's really, really quite interesting when you can see that you're under-indexing on, for example, department stores versus your competitor, or travel or fashion. You can really put emphasis into that, and you can see the revenue that your competitors are generating in fashion. And if you're not doing as well, you really need to investigate why. Is it the offers that you're getting? Are you not putting them live as quickly? Do you not have the relationships in place with some of the key retailers? Some of the basic things that you can get from these reports are quite staggering and very, very useful. And I know that virtually all the networks will give you this. CJ, Link, Share, Affiliate Window. I'm not sure about Affiliate, but I'm sure they do, and Xanox. So the data's there. Let's move on to KPIs. So in terms of the relationship, because this is about maximising the performance of the relationship between the two, what about the KPIs that you have at TUI, for example? Do you feel that all your publishers understand what really drives your ROI?
No, not at all. And it's really, really fundamental that they do understand what our KPIs are, and there is a misunderstanding from some of them that they just don't get it. So how we get around that is we now do affiliate days down at the network, so that we invite practically a whole bunch of our affiliates, whether they're the large affiliates or the small ones, and we get them along once a year, and we try and talk through the KPIs and our brands as well, and we also are working on putting our own sort of media pack together so that they understand what the brands are about, what the KPIs are, so they get that full understanding right from the start, and it seems to be working well.
I think what's important on that point as well is that if an affiliate is looking to apply to your program, the KPI information and details about your program is usually available when they sign up to the program. So I guess it's important how that's portrayed across, and then if they're following up to you afterwards saying, we'd like to apply, this is why, then you know they've kind of at least had a bit of time to read through your program description. You've then got the opportunity to say, look, if you can meet these key points, then you know we'll accept you onto the program.
Yeah, but even in sort of the program terms, you don't know if they're reading all of it, and
it could be quite long-winded.
And for us, because we know the product inside out, it's and they don't. That it's important for us to get across. So we have, for example, differentiated products, which are high-end holidays that we go on, and they make us the most margin, and affiliates wouldn't really know what they are. So it's working with them to try and get across what those products are, so that they are promoting them in the best way possible, which means that it's better commission for them as well.
Okay. And what about locking out publishers? I mean, let's give a good example. Zalando, I believe, in one of the countries, they said to us, "Oh, we're not accepting any more voucher sites. We've got 4, that's it." And I think you alluded to something similar with TUI, that you work with 5 in the UK and you don't really work with anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, how, if you were entering the market, do you then get onto the program, or how can a publisher tempt you to even notice them and get on the program?
Yeah, it's quite difficult because if you use voucher codes, for example, there's so many sites out there that it's difficult, I think, for new players to come into that market now.
So they need to knock on your door
yeah,
and camp outside.
Particularly as the ones that are in the market and the 5 that we work with are so well established, I suppose. From a point of view of why we work with those 5, then the reason why we work with them is because they prove their value to us all the time. They maintain a really good relationship with us and they know our brands inside out. So because they're being proactive all the time, that's why we just work with those. So it would be quite difficult for a new player to come in. But if they can demonstrate those things, then we most certainly would look to work with them.
Consider them. And just out of interest, I mean, what percentage of your publisher base, for example, are under non-disclosure agreements?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good
Not many?
I would like to get back on the website thing, that there's like a maximum of 5 websites in a program. I think that also, you know, for SEO reasons and ranking and, you know, working on Google organic rankings and such, you need to have a story at the moment. You need to have you need to work on something, or if you're not special anymore, I think if you're the 9,000th voucher website, you have a very hard time, and now you can start and survive on the smaller programs, but on the bigger programs, that's what we see now. In the bigger countries, the bigger programs, those are the hardest programs to get in, because they want to work with the best only, with a good story. And I think it will be changing in the upcoming 2 years, that there's not even a chance anymore for...
If they can demonstrate how they differ, because usually you would look at a voucher code site and go, well, it does the same thing as that voucher code site. And that. So if they can demonstrate that they offer something different, then that's very compelling for us to work with them.
So it's having that USP, isn't it?
Yes.
You really need that USP as a publisher.
Yeah, you need it.
Yeah.
I think as well for the smaller publishers, if you know, because let's face it, I mean, if you look at the way that affiliate programs are now structured, with, I think the IAB report last year, or towards the end of last year, cited that 65% of sales come from voucher code and cashback sites collectively. So the other 35% are, you know, you're looking at your comparisons, you're looking at your content and your blogs, and let's face it, if you're a small publisher now looking to get into the market, you've got to do something that's adding value, not just by saying I'm a voucher site, but I write a lot of content, or I'm using social media or other channels, you know. It's not so much a secret we have at Optimus PM anymore, because a lot of merchants are now aware of the Chinese community, for example, that can drive a significant amount of sales to merchants, particularly within the health and beauty sector. Now, we tapped into this probably around sort of May, June last year, realised that this was a niche. We started promoting quite heavily to some of our merchants, and now it's become quite, you know, one of the biggest sort of channels in that particular sector, and that's because obviously they're using unique ways of driving, you know, quality traffic and converting traffic. So I think it's important as a newbie or as a small publisher showing where you're differentiating.
And I think the networks can help with that. I mean, I think it was Simon Bird yesterday on the international panel who was talking about the need for incubation and the idea that networks need to be supportive with smaller players and help to grow them. And I think, you know, when you're looking at a situation like Charlie's, where she's got a very mature program that to a certain extent is on lockdown for certain publisher types, I think as a network we can work with smaller players, get them started perhaps on slightly less well-known brands, give them a chance to prove their worth and have a really strong case study to then be able to talk to our larger advertisers and say, well, look, these guys are a bit newer in the market, but, you know, they've really added significant growth here and we've proved that they're worth it. So, yeah, and I think it's going to be ever more important. in our US business, we have an emerging markets team now, which is out there, emerging media team, which is out there scouting out new publisher opportunities, sort of attending shows like this, looking really closely at the incoming mail that we get to really spot those rising stars and to work very closely with them to get the most out of them.
I think that's really important because you've got the big players right now, but it always goes in cycles. There's one famous site publisher in the UK who's been affected, I believe, by Penguin, and the revenue's probably dropped from about £8 million a year to, I'm going to predict, about £1 million. And you've then got other competitors coming in and taking their space. And I know, for example, when we first started Voucher Cloud, I went to one network in particular, and I can't name them, and I asked for a certain report, and they said, oh, you're not earning enough with the network, I can't give you that. And it was like a head hitting the brick wall moment. It's like, how is that building a relationship with a publisher? Just because they're not performing today certainly does not mean they're not going to be performing in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. And if you're investing all your account management staff and energy into those top players, and like you say, ignoring your emerging publisher types, then it's a very risky strategy to employ. Let's take a question from the audience, perhaps. Anybody have a question? No? Come on, there must be somebody brave enough. Yeah, good. Just one coming, sorry.
The question I have is, my name is Ron, by the way. I think it's for the networks or the agencies. In terms of tracking for myself, whether I have a content site or I do direct media buys or pay-per-click, etc., how effective are your, I guess, tools to utilize my pixel so I can track it from my side of the story? Because I can tell you kind of from a personal experience, and I'm talking about like a private kind of deal where I couldn't put my pixels anywhere and basically track any of my ad spend. I know you guys are worried about the advertiser perspective, but I'm worried about my perspective as a publisher as well.
Sure. Can you give me a bit more detail on the scenario that you're talking about where
yes, I mean, I had, obviously I was trying to do, I could send free traffic, that's not a problem. However, if I want to send, let's say Facebook advertising, okay, mm-hmm. and they would not even allow me to put a pixel on the lead page or the thank you page, to track my flow, to assess my, conversion funnel, to know. So I know that something is working on my side, marketing-wise, because I know the traffic is coming in, but to correlate it, vice versa. And I'm talking about a very large organization, So, sure. But it was like a private deal. It was no network, no agency. So that's kind of my question. For myself, let's say coming to know your networks or your agency, how would you deal with that kind of a situation?
Well, we do have several publishers who request to be able to put their own tracking pixels on the advertisers' pages, and that ultimately comes down to what the advertiser will allow and how much resource they've got on their end to be able to implement those. So, we can, if we've got the justification for why you need it, and we can talk about how that's going to optimize the campaign, then we can work really hard to push for it. But ultimately, we're only going to be as good as the capabilities of the advertiser and the willingness of the advertiser to work to those kind of models.
And I think a compelling cases from what I've seen have been within the cart abandonment arena and also within retargeting, where they've had to install the pixel onto the advertiser site so they can track what's going on after the journey.
Okay. Should we move on to best in class? Because there are some very good publishers out there who I think have nailed it on the head in terms of many of the things that we talked about: credibility, transparency. Who wants to start with this one? I mean, you'd say Imbal in Acticodes. Are you best in class? What aren't you doing as good as you should be? What are you doing brilliantly?
A lot of things. I want to grow more. It's just I want to go faster. But To speak about another affiliate, and what I personally like a lot, and a positive case is in my case is one of my not even a competitor, but it's a fashion chick in the Netherlands, a fashion website, and really they have a face who's the fashion chick. It wasn't even in the start decided that she was going to be the fashion chick, but she ended up being it, and now it just works as a brand and as a community, and it's, in my eyes, one of the perfect affiliates, as it should be, and also with how they deal with the exposure and what they're doing. So in my eyes, that's a very good case, how they're doing it, and now rolling out worldwide. So.
Okay. And it's quite a nice, it's a content site, so that so that hits a lot of bonuses. It's not just another voucher code site, for example.
True, they use vouchers. There's a lot of data feeds, but it's a content site.
Okay. What about you? You must see a lot at CJ. I mean, who are the standouts? You have an award that you give to publishers each year, don't you?
Well, yes, we do actually at CJU, that's right. Maybe we need to look at one more specifically for the European market. But actually, one thing in terms of media packs that I wanted to say earlier on, which perhaps a little bit off topic here, but think about the size of what you send us, because we're going to be distributing that out to a load of advertisers. And so both in terms of how long it's going to take them to digest the information and the physical size of the file, those can both be blockers to your message getting through. So had that thought earlier, I just wanted to share it. But
so what do you think, 5 pages?
Yeah, probably a maximum of 5, and kind of key stats. But yeah, give it personality as well, because that's always engaging, I think. But in terms of publishers who I think do it well, I think it's often in areas where there's kind of intense competition and a need for statistics where it comes out really well. So Mickey mentioned basket abandonment, and I think sales cycle springs to mind as someone who's always sort of sending over infographics, market reports, case studies of what they've been doing. And from a network perspective, not only is that useful to the advertiser in terms of selling things in internally, but it's good for us too. It keeps us informed, and it gives us a broader spread of information than what we'd necessarily have from our own reports. So I think they do very well with their sort of CRM policy with the networks, and also the type of stuff that they're sending us.
And I'd say vouchercodes.co.uk do it very well as well. They always turn up to meetings with a proper presentation and full of stats and hit-wise stats and everything, and it just goes back to that credibility, and they make an effort to really build the relationship between the advertiser and themselves. And they also, not every publisher can do this, but they also host a lot of networking parties as well. So it just helps to build up their brand and build up that relationship more.
It comes to something when you've got publishers organising Christmas parties for networks and agencies in London, and they're spending £20,000, £30,000 on them. How on earth does a little old affiliate entering the space compete for attention in that scenario? It's very, very difficult, huh?
And I think it's a really important point to mention too, because I think there's a danger with this session that we're just sort of talking about really big publishers, and if you're someone with a smaller model or you're younger to the market, you may be sitting there thinking, well, this is the frustration that I have. I feel that networks sort of put all their energies into the bigger guys. But I do think at the end of the day, this whole business is built on relationships, and if you can forge a good relationship with your network and kind of just check in, speak to us, remind us that you're there. We have that obligation to you too, but I think especially at the beginning when you're a newer name for us, that can make such a big difference. And, if we think of you as someone who's well-informed, friendly and enthusiastic, and we know that if we connect you with an advertiser, that's going to shine through on the relationship, I do think that's really important, even though it's simple and it's kind of common sense business, but it's worth pointing out.
It is. It's like you have to be a personable person in affiliate marketing to be able to go to the account managers, build a relationship with them, get on with them, know what they like. It's simple sales tactics, isn't it? You have to engage with them effectively. I've been said we've got about 8 minutes left, so Anything else we want to add to the session here?
Well, the funny thing is that it's all so simple. That's you know, it's a press package. It's simple, but it's not being done too much. You know? It should be done more often. But I think it's not necessary yet. But in a half a year or a year, you can do without it, and that's what should be known and out there by the publishers. You need to have a story.
Yeah, and I think we touched on earlier about location, so it doesn't matter even if you're miles away from London, it still shouldn't be an excuse for how you build that relationship, because I think, as Mickey said, you can do it over conference calls, Skype, whatever. There's always a means to build that relationship, even if it isn't face-to-face.
Yes. Another point as well, I mean, if you are lucky enough or fortunate enough to be able to attend events like this, or other events that are going on internationally, either in the UK or abroad, then, make sure that you do network at the events that you attend, and make sure that you exchange cards, make sure you follow up with them afterwards. I think a big challenge that, I think merchants, when I was network side as well, you get publishers come on to speak to you and say, yeah, we're doing this, it's going to be really, really good. Excellent, well, here's my card, drop me an email after the show or after the event, and I'll pass it to the right person. And then you don't hear from them. So I think, it sounds like probably saying the same old thing, but I think a lot of the initial effort has to come from the publisher to get noticed to the merchant via the agency or via the network. Once you've done that part, then, the onus is on us as an agency or the network to then follow up on that and to ask either further questions or say, yeah, okay, well, let's have a look at what you can do.
And I guess one more point just on general housekeeping from networks. I mean, all the networks have different ways of presenting this information, but it's really worthwhile looking over how you've uploaded information about the sites that you have available for advertisers, how you're presenting your model, because I know certainly on the commission junction system, when advertisers are going through and sort of making their own decisions about which relationships they're going to go with, then that's all the information they have about you initially. And it's surprising how few of those profiles are completely up to date. So I would say, although it's a really simple point, it's one worth bearing in mind.
That's a good point, actually, because when we get the applications through, quite often someone won't put a contact name on there, and if there's no contact name, then I won't accept them onto the programme. So, it's little things like that.
Do you have a question?
Can I ask you a follow-up to that?
Sure.
It's coming.
I think just to raise on that, also if you're applying for programs, make sure you've got a blooming holding page up, or at least you have a PDF with an explanation of what you're doing on the site. We went to Germany, for example, and we had what we thought was enough, and we probably got declined by 70% of the programs instantly. Schoolboy error, must admit, but you need to put all your impression details on, you need to put your company details on, you need to prove your credibility. Sorry, go for it.
No worries. Following up on what you just said, I mean, I already have like a media kit for myself and a few things that I've done. But let's say we're launching a new thing, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that you're launching a new site that has very little traffic, etc. We're actually in the process of building something. So to get prepared, let's say 2-3 months ahead of time, we want to look at the merchants that can fit and to kind of pre-sell prior to the fact. So obviously we don't have any traffic. So how do we get over that hump?
Yeah, and it is a bit of a chicken and an egg thing. And I think that's where the network can help you. That's when you need to be having a conversation with someone in our publisher team and saying, look, it's not up yet, but these are the objectives. This is what it's going to look like. This is our target market. Can you help us get behind a push? These are the advertisers I really want to speak to. And, any network should be able to help you with that. And I know, as I've mentioned, we're talking about a lot of publishers and not so many people network side, but I think the people with the drive and the ambition who've got a really strong product will get that support, and we will help them get it out there.
It's not that easy. It's very hard to promise something, but just talk. That's the thing in my eyes. Just talk.
I have a different niche that I have, percentages in that I can
Yeah, so if you've got kind of proven form in another area, that helps too, because they know that you are a kind of proven quantity, even if it's not in that particular area, but you've got a pedigree of making affiliate programs work. Yeah.
Cool. Let's wrap this up. Final question, though. So going back to my original tweet, which was down here, who believes that, if you put your hands up, that the onus for the relationship should be on the advertiser, the agency, and the network? Nobody? So who thinks it should be the publisher? Okay. There's a few. So mostly publisher. So I think that's an interesting thing just to hold off on, that it's a business out there. It's as entrepreneurs, as publishers, you should be getting in the face of networks and advertisers and selling your business. So.
I suppose just to follow on from that, as networks, we have the responsibility to respond to that prompt and really help you make it a success.
Yeah. Okay.
And also that from an agency too.
Great. Cool. Well, thank you very much. Time to wrap it up. So thank you for coming. Yes.